Hello everyone, Wisteria here. Welcome back to Aesop's Fables. The first one is called The Ass and the Dog. An ass and a dog. Well, they were on the travels together. And as they went along, they found a sealed packet lying on the ground. The ass picked it up, broke the seal, and found it contained some writing, which he proceeded to read out aloud to the dog. As he read on, it turned out to be all about grass and barley and hay. In short, all the kinds of fodder that asses are fond of. The dog was a good deal bored with listening to all this, till at last his impatience got the better of him, and he cried, "Just skip a few pages, friend, and see if there isn't something about meat and bones." The ass glanced all through the packet, but found nothing of the sort, and said, "Nope." Then the dog said, in disgust, "Throw it away. Do, what's the good of that thing like that, with nothing in it for me?" The ass carrying the image. A certain man put an image on the back of his ass to take it to one of the temples of the town. As they went along the road, all the people they met uncovered and bowed their heads out of reverence for the image. But the ass thought they were doing it out of respect for himself, and began to give himself airs accordingly. At last, he became so conceited that he imagined he could do as he liked, and by way of protest against the load he was carrying, he came to a full stop and flatly declined to proceed any further. His driver, finding him so obstinate, hit him hard and long with his stick, saying all the while, "Oh, you dunder-headed idiot, do you suppose it's come to this, that men pay worship to an ass?" And the lesson in that is, rude shocks await those who take to themselves the credit that is due to others. And it's basically a lesson that you don't take credit for other people's good things. Simple as that. The Athenian and the Theban. An Athenian and a Theban were on the road together, and passed the time in conversation, as is the way of travellers. After discussing a variety of subjects, they began to talk about heroes, a topic that tends to be more fertile than edifying. Each of them was lavish in the praises of the heroes of his own city, while eventually the Theban asserted that Mercules, and it says Mercules, I think it should say Hercules there. There's no such thing as a Mercules, I'm pretty sure. They have put an M where there should be an H, so that's a spelling mistake. It's interesting though that it's there. Anyway, he protested that Hercules was the greatest hero who had ever lived on the earth, and now occupied a foremost place among the gods better than any, while the Athenian insisted that Theseus was far superior, for his fortune had been in every way supremely blessed, whereas, and it's Hercules, but again it says Mercules, I don't know why, had at one time been forced in act as a servant, and he gained his point, for he was a very glib fellow, like all Athenians, so that the Theban, who was no match for him in talking, cried at last in some disgust, "All right, have your way. I only hope that, when our heroes are angry with us, then Athens may suffer from the anger of Hercules and Thebes. Only from that." I don't know what that even means, guys. I've no idea. There's no lesson in it. The conversation is very peculiar. That's definitely a spelling mistake. There's no such thing as a hero called Mercules. I know that. It definitely should be Hercules. And I have no idea what it means. I'm not sure. The goat hero and the goat. In a goat herd that was gathering as a flock, they were going to return to the fold, but one of the goats strayed and refused to join the rest. He tried for a long time, this herder, to get the goat to return by calling and whistling, but the goat took no notice of him at all. So at last he threw a stone at her and broke one of her arms. In dismay, he begged her not to tell the master, the one who owns the herd. But she did reply, "You silly fellow, my horns would cry aloud, even if I held my tongue." This made her a hero to the other goats, and she was then known as the goat hero, for the herdsman would never ever hurt the goats again, as they'd obviously he'd be told on. The lesson in that is it's no use trying to hide what can't be hidden. Remember, as we go forward, they do seem to get older. The older they get, the stranger they seem to become, actually, to be fair. The sheep and the dog. Once upon a time, the sheep complained to the shepherd about the difference in his treatment of themselves and his dog. "Your conduct," said they, "is very strange and, we think, very unfair. We provide you with wool and lambs and milk. You give us nothing but grass, and even that we have to find for ourselves. But you get nothing at all from the dog. Yet, it seems, you feed him with tidbits from your own table." Their remarks were overheard by the dog, who spoke up at once and said, "Yes, and quite right, too. Where would you be if it wasn't for me? Thieves would steal you. Wolves could eat you indeed. If I didn't keep constant watch over you, you would be too terrified even to graze." The sheep were obliged to acknowledge that he spoke the truth, and never again made a grievance of the regard in which he was held by his master. Well, I suppose it's true in the long run, right? That's what dogs are there for. The sheep herd and the wolf. Now, they are called sheep herders back then, but I think now they're just all called shepherds. But it was the way that they worded it in old terms. They would call them sheep herders, not shepherds, which is interesting, but I'm going to change it to shepherds so you understand it. A shepherd found a wolf's cub straying in the pasture and took him home and reared him along with his dogs. When the cub grew up to full air and age, if ever a wolf stole a sheep from the flock, he used to join the dogs in hunting him down. It sometimes happened that the dogs failed to come up with the thief, and abandoning the pursuit, return home. The wolf would, on such occasions, continue the chase by himself, and, when he overtook the culprit, would stop and share the feast with him, then return to the shepherd. But if some time passed without sheep being carried off by the wolves, he would steal one himself. Oh my gosh. And one day, he was caught in the act, and fastening a rope round his neck, he was hung on the nearest tree. Wow, that's really harsh. The shepherd actually hung the wolf on it. Wow, that's awful. There is a lesson in that, but it's what's bred in the bone is sure to come out in the flesh. Which is true, and I really don't agree with that wolf being hung. I think it should have been let free, you know? I mean, these are old tales, though. I suppose it would make sense back then, but to me, it makes no sense at all, that. I'm sorry, it just doesn't. The pig and the sheep. A pig found his way into a meadow where a flock of sheep were grazing. The shepherd caught him and was proceeding to carry him off to the butcher's when he set up a loud squealing and struggled to get free. The sheep rebuked him for making such to do, and said to him, "The shepherd catches us regularly and drags us off just like that. We don't make any fuss." "No, I dare not say," replied the pig, "but my case and yours are altogether different. He only wants you for wool. He wants me for my bacon." Well, obviously that's kind of obvious in the tale itself. A gardener and his dog. A gardener's dog fell into a deep well, from which his master used to draw water for the plants in his garden with rope and bucket. Failing to get the dog out by means of this, the gardener went down into the well himself in order to fetch him up. But the dog thought he had come to make sure of drowning him, so he bit his master as soon as he came within reach, and hurt him a good deal, with the result that he left the dog to his fate and climbed out of the well, remarking, "It serves me quite right for trying to save so determined one he was to suicide." Interesting. The rivers and the sea. Once upon a time, all the rivers combined to protest against the action of the sea in making their waters salt. "When we come to you," said they to the sea, "we are sweet and we are drinkable. But when once we have mingled with you, our waters become briny, yuck, unpalatable as your own." The sea replied shortly, "Keep away from me and you'll remain sweet." Stay away from those you do not wish to attend upon. Yeah, interesting story. You see how much weirder they're getting. They're quite strange, aren't they? As the older they get more strange. But not only that, some of them I think personally are quite brutal compared to others. It's always interested me in how brutal they actually are. It's bizarre. That episode is finished for now, guys. Thank you for listening and many blessings.